You are listening to the Phillip Jordan Show, talking SEC football and beyond.
What's up, everybody? Welcome into the Phillip Jordan Show. I am your host, Phillip Jordan from Last Word on College Football and 96.9 The Legend in Dothan, Alabama, where I'm the in-studio host and producer, Dothan Wills Football. On today's show, I am going to be joined by Lance Griffin, host of The Game Plan on WOOF 100.1 FM right here in Dothan, Alabama, where I reside. You can listen to Lance Monday through Friday from 6 to 9 a.m. during football season. Me and Lance, we will talk about the Alabama Crimson Tide, a look back to the Texas game and where they go moving forward, and just our mad respect for Bryce Young. We will preview the Auburn-Penn State game, what is going on with Auburn quarterback situation, and should they wear orange jerseys on Saturday? We'll talk about that. And then we'll also preview Mississippi State, LSU, and A&M Miami. And that one, and of course, at the end of the show, I will give my picks for the weekend. You can check out the Phillip Jordan Show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. And if you're on Apple Podcasts, please follow, rate, and review. Leave a review. I will read it on a future edition of the show. You can also watch the show over on YouTube at the Phillip Jordan Sports YouTube channel. Just hit the subscribe button, hit the bell for all the notifications so you'll know when there's a new video, and leave a comment on the video. I'll read that on a future edition of the show as well. Everybody joining me on the show today is Lance Griffin. Been a while since me and Lance have done this, a podcast for him. He is the host of The Game Plan on WOOF FM 100.1 here in Dothan, where I'm from. You can check him out in the morning from 6 to 9 a.m., getting your day started off right there if you're listening to Lance. And Lance, I appreciate you coming on the show, and I'm excited to talk to college football with you.
Same here, Phillip. I appreciate you asking me. We got a lot to talk about.
Yeah, there's a little bit to talk about in the state of Alabama when it comes to college football. It's really been an interesting first 2 weeks in college football, because I think a lot of times we come in the season, we've got these preconceived notions of what we expect to see when the season starts, and then some of those things haven't come to fruition. Some teams that we thought would be really good are struggling. But what's been your open canvas, your overall thoughts these first 2 weeks with college football?
Well, it's amazing because we always do the same thing. Every year we do this after week one. We make these overgeneralizations about this team must be really good or this team must be really bad based on 60 minutes of play. And we're almost always wildly wrong because week two proves that. And that's almost exactly what we saw this year already in 2 weeks, is that the generalizations that we made in week one were proven wrong in week two. And maybe outside of Georgia, maybe we just don't know about any other team in college football to make a general assumption like we did in week one.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be honest, I was guilty. If I came to the season, Alabama's the best team overall. They've got the best two players. I mean, they'll get the offensive line fixed. They're always good at receiver, so I wouldn't worry about them. And, and actually looking at the national thing, I know Ohio State's that team, a lot of people say it could beat Alabama and Georgia. But really, when you look at the way Notre Dame get beat by Marshall, no disrespect to Marshall, that's also got to have you kind of question some things for Ohio State, because they struggled with that Notre Dame team.
They did. That's a perfect example, because you thought maybe if anybody's going to give Alabama a good run this year because of how much Georgia lost to the NFL, that it would be Ohio State. Maybe the first time in 3-4 years that you could say Alabama probably doesn't have the most talented receiver core. No, Ohio State probably does, and they have a Heisman Trophy candidate at quarterback as well. And then they came out and they did struggle against Notre Dame, and now we don't know what to think. And we thought we knew what to think about Alabama after week one as easily as they had it against what we thought was a decent Utah State team. Apparently, Utah State is not a decent team based on what happened to them this past weekend. So here we are back at square one in week three.
Yeah, coming off the Alabama-Texas game, of course, we're recording this on a Tuesday evening, the podcast dropping on Thursday. But what's been the temperature with the callers, coming from that Alabama-Texas game? What's the callers feeling on Alabama right now?
The temperature's hot. It is. For the most part, you do have a faction that will be happy with any W, but the vast majority of the Alabama fans have been very upset at the lack of discipline that the team showed throughout the game, with overwhelming number of penalties, the ones that got called, the ones that should have gotten called that didn't. So it leaves them concerned going forward. We saw some good performances in the SEC against some teams that are on Alabama's schedule on down the road. And if Alabama doesn't get some things figured out, they could be in trouble.
Yeah, once again, going back on receiver, I felt like coming in at Tremaine Burton. I'm not saying he's as good as John Minchie, but he would fill that John Minchie role. And of course, you got Tyler Harrell coming in from Louisville, which he hasn't played. I feel like he could fill that Jameson Williams role. I mean, but right now your leading receivers are Trayshawn Holden and Colby Prentice, and they've showed some struggles. And then your leading catcher, just reception wise, is a running back in Jameer Gibbs. So it just looks like an offensive line. I mean, that was an issue against Texas. I mean, they couldn't run the ball outside of the 81-yard touchdown by Jason McClellan. They didn't get much of a running game, and it put pretty much the whole game offensively on the shoulders of Bryce Young.
It did. Half the receptions that Alabama got on Saturday were to the running backs or tight ends. They just didn't hit the receivers a lot other than that McClellan run. Why did the 4th and inches not work late in the game with Roydell Williams? Well, fans would say it's because you lined up in the shotgun, but that run was designed to go to the left, and that left side of the line just got blown off the ball, and he had to cut back to his right. And when he did, he tripped over a lineman and didn't get to the line to gain. So if the line had done its job, we're having a little bit of a different conversation this morning or this evening. And there's some issues that, again, we thought in week 1 maybe we're getting answered. I remember after the Utah State game, I said, well, Alabama's got an abundance of weapons at wideout. Maybe they don't have one super duper star, but how is Georgia not using Jermaine Burton more than they did? Because he showed out in week 1 and Prentice, as you mentioned, and then all of a sudden in week 2, you can't get the ball to him.
Yeah, and it was a little thing, but Joe Clapp pointed out in the broadcast, there was one pass where Prentice, he kept going in, on his like a slant router, and he didn't, it was his own coverage where he should have stopped.
Right.
Bryce Young assumes he's going to stop and set down, but he didn't. He continued with his route.
Right.
I think that's just one thing where Alabama's going to be interesting to watch the rest of the year, just how Bryce Young, and these receivers get that chemistry on. That is a receiver quarterback chemistry thing, and, just kind of see how that goes moving forward.
Yes, and they've, I'm sure, tried to work an awful lot during the offseason in those quote unquote voluntary workouts, but even at that, there's still some getting used to in game situations where a defender may just be a couple of steps different in his stance, and a quarterback will read that one way, and a receiver, especially an inexperienced one, will read it another way, and that's how interceptions get thrown.
But the good thing for Alabama, and Nick Saban talked about it in the post-game interview, he has Bryce Young. And that is he eliminates a lot of things that aren't going right for Alabama. And I tell you, that's what gets me. And this game, to a degree, reminded me of the Iron Bowl because the Alabama offense was struggling for most of the game. But at the end of the game, when the game was on the line, Bryce Young come through for them, and he did that last year, time and time. I mean, they lost to A&M, then they lose to Georgia in the national championship game. But just his composure, and nothing seems to faze him. Like he is the same in the first quarter and in the fourth quarter. Very even keel. I mean, you watched him play Saturday. He's got Texas players all over him. I mean, live bullets flying all around him, but nothing phases him. It's just, I think, that's a real big thing in Alabama. And it's just, what's been your take on just watching Bryce Young last year and now these first 2 weeks and how he's able to handle those situations?
Yeah, the demeanor is what stands out, and it's certainly now with him almost on the heels of Jalen Hurts, who had the same demeanor when he was at Alabama. Just absolutely nothing rattles him, nothing at all. You can't rattle him apparently, because if he was not going to get rattled in the Auburn game or the Texas game, he's not going to get rattled. And he was able to find receivers on that drive that he had not been able to find for 6 straight possessions, and make great decisions. They say his intellectual part of the game that we don't maybe pay attention to as a fan is just off the charts.
So obviously they got Louisiana Monroe this week, then they play Vanderbilt. No disrespect to the 2-1 Commodores, but I don't think Alabama's got to worry about the next 2 opponents. But then is Arkansas, the trip to Arkansas, who looks like right now could be the biggest threat to them early in the year in the SEC West. These next 2 weeks for you, what do you want to see and need to see from Alabama as you think going into that Arkansas matchup?
Well, I think certainly against these two opponents, what you want to see is an absolutely dominant performance on the offensive line. You just want to see, because by all rights, this is a line that should blow its next two opponents off the line of scrimmage and give these running backs, Gibbs and McClellan and Williams, and who knows, maybe even Trey Sanders, an opportunity to just have holes to run
Mm-hmm.
through. So I want to see that for sure. And then I'm sure that coaches want to see these receivers get open, even if it's against DBs that are not near as good as they're working against in practice. Just that they know the routes to run, they make the right reads, like you and I were talking about just a minute ago, and that they execute the way they're supposed to. Because talent-wise, you won't be able to know much, but certainly execution-wise, you will.
Yeah, absolutely. And so now transition to Auburn and Penn State. Of course, these two played last year up in Happy Valley, where Penn State won 28-20. First, Lance, I want to ask you a question. Uh, would you like to see Auburn wear orange jerseys on Saturday? Because that seems to be – I know the players want it. And I'm a
Yeah.
traditionalist. I've always seen players, and there's been some people online say Auburn should wear orange jersey. I'm not for it. I don't like gimmicks with jerseys. I guess that's why I'm not always the biggest Oregon person. But I know it's a little fun conversation. But what's been your thoughts on that whole conversation of this early on in this week with the orange jersey talk?
I guess I have two thoughts. One, from a visually pleasing standpoint, I think the orange jerseys are cool. I back in the day they wore them and they were really cool. They looked really good. So just if you ask me, do those jerseys look good? I'll say yes, they look good, and if they want to wear them, they should. But my second thought is, don't take this the wrong way, Auburn fans, but the more that you talk about your uniforms, the less you're interested in your team. And people will say, no, that's not true. But if your uniforms are dominating the message boards and the conversations, that's because you really aren't keen on talking about where your team's been performing. So wear the orange uniforms if you want to, but that's such an ancillary, minor thing. They've got to figure out a way to beat Penn State. And if so, well, let's forget what happened the last 2 weeks and the subpar performances. They're 3-0, and they could be 5-0.
And I felt like all season, especially after all the stuff that happened with Brian Harsin, the inquiry, and all that drama that happened back in February. This was a pivotal game because you look at the schedule. You should beat Mercer and San Jose State, which they did. The San Jose State game, they didn't dominate probably like a lot of Auburn fans would want to, but you won the game. But this game's huge to me because next you got Missouri, and then you play LSU, and we'll see what LSU's got this week against Mississippi State. You win this one, you're 3-0, like you said. Then those are two teams you feel like you should be able to beat. Then your first 5 at home. I just feel like for Brian Harsin and for this team, this is such a huge game for them. You hate to say must win,
I know,
but it almost kind of feels like it is for them.
Yeah, it really does for many reasons. You've already missed the opportunity to look really, really good in your first 2 games. So that was a missed opportunity because you had subpar opponents. Well, you kind of slopped around a little bit with both of those. That's a recruiting missed opportunity because recruits are out there, and Auburn's got a lot going for it in everything except right now the on-field product. Mm-hmm. And you had an opportunity to show, I think, in those 2 games, here's what we're all about. Well, they blew it. But you go out there and you beat Penn State. You're a 3.5-point underdog right now. You go out there and do that, then all of a sudden you're going to get their attention again. And it's a long way until December. You've got an opportunity to go out in the next 3-4 games after that and try to make something of getting these kids' attention. And you got to get a good recruiting class in for December. It's vitally, vitally important after last year's class. So there is a lot riding on this game. Do we call it a must win? Maybe we stop just short of that.
Yeah, and then, in the first 2 games, a lot of the offseason conversation on the team, it was the quarterback. Who was going to be quarterback? Bo Nix is now in Oregon. TJ Finley took over last year. He underperformed. He was not exciting when he played last year. And it's kind of been the same thing this season. He's forced some passes. He's thrown 3 interceptions in the first 2 games. And Robbie Asher, to me, is a guy, I think he's a really good athlete. He's just not developed as a quarterback yet. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I guess Zach Calzada is so bad, he can't even get on the field,
I don't.
That's a thing I haven't understood. But what's been your take with the quarterback situation? Because I joked with you before I hit record button, I just put Tank Bigsby in the shotgun and just roll a wildcat for the whole game. But just, what's your take on these quarterbacks and going forward in this game against Penn State?
Well, I think we were all hoping that TJ Finley would take that giant leap forward that a lot of people were hoping that he would. It was inconsistency that we saw in his days at LSU. It was inconsistency we saw last year. And, we tried to make the case of, okay, well, this is going to be Brian Harsin. It'll be his hand-picked offensive coordinator that'll be working with Finley. It'll be his offense, et cetera, et cetera. Well, we just haven't seen that giant leap forward in him. Maybe this is the product that we're going to see where he's going to make some good plays. He's going to make some good decisions. But then as we've seen with 3 really bad passes in 2 games against some subpar opponents, you can't afford to do that against good competition. And with Ashford, I think the book on him coming to Auburn from Oregon is exactly what we've seen. Tremendous athlete, tremendous speed, but it's a roll of the dice when he throws a pass downfield. Maybe really good, maybe really bad.
Yeah, because he showed against Mercer one of the most beautiful deep passes I've ever seen, and then throws the interception against San Jose State as soon as he gets in there. So you're right. It's kind of it's 50-50 on what you're going to get out of him. And going into this game, I would hope Auburn's plan to just ride Tank Bigsby, just roll with him, and Jarquez Hunter too. I mean, he's a really good runner. Then have replays with Ashford for you going in. And I know nationally we have gotten a chance to see Penn State. They played Purdue a few weeks, opened up 135-31. So they've been in a high-profile game to start the year. Offensively for Auburn, what will you be looking for on Saturday against Penn State?
Yeah, they've got to figure out a way to run the ball when Penn State knows they're going to run the ball. And that's easier said than done. So when you are trying to establish the run against a team that knows you're going to run and is trying to stack the box, you've just got to mix up where you're running and hope that you can catch them with some misdirection and some things that fool them, because they're going to have a lot of players up there at the front of the line of scrimmage. And then if you get a little bit of success on that, then hope you can pop one over the top and catch a big play through the air. And then finally, I think you're hoping you can hold them to 20 points or less. And I think that's the recipe for winning this game. Like I said, it's only a 3.5 point spread. So basically the odds makers see it as not quite a toss-up, but very close to a toss-up. You're at home. It's a great atmosphere there at Jordan-Hare. Definitely a winnable game.
On the defense side of the ball, I think Auburn's got a solid defense. And I think San Jose State did make some plays on them in the passing game on Saturday night. But I like the front, like Derek Hall, what he has. I think Cam Riley's played really well at linebacker first 2 games. Of course, Owen Papo is a really good player. Just him staying on the field has been an issue for Auburn. But of course, they're playing, I think, the oldest quarterback in college football right now, Sean Clifford. I mean, Lance, I'm 35. I graduated high school about 17 years ago. I think his freshman year was my senior year of high school. I don't know. He's been there a while.
Yeah.
But he did pretty good against Auburn last year, 280 yards, 28-30 passing, 2 touchdowns. But I've called him the Big Ten Bo Nix because he can make some boneheaded plays in his own right. Yeah. So it's going to be interesting with Auburn, maybe get pressure on him, force some mistakes. Do something to kind of create some opportunities for them. But, what's your thought on that side of the ball?
Yeah, I think Auburn's going to need to lower the completion percentage that they've been allowing the quarterbacks to get. You just mentioned Clifford from last year completing a lot of passes. You get that possession or percentage knocked down to 50% or somewhere around there, force some 3 and outs. I think that's what you need to do, because especially last Saturday against San Jose State, you saw Auburn's defenders giving San Jose State a lot of cushion. They can't afford to do that against Penn State. It's just going to make things too easy for Penn State. So really clamp down on those guys, make it really hard for Clifford, force them to run the ball, and they can stop the run. I think Auburn can. And if so, I think they're in good shape.
And you're going to have that Jordan-Hare crowd behind you too as well. So that helps.
That's right. It'll be hot. Well, I don't know. We're coming a little bit of a cool spell here. Maybe it won't be. I don't know, but maybe compared to Happy Valley, it will be.
Yeah, so it's going to be a fun environment there on Saturday. Even just watching TV, you can always tell how that Jordan-Hare crowd comes across. And real quick, with 2 games in the SEC, I just want to get your thoughts on Mississippi State and LSU will play at 5 o'clock on Saturday. It's because Mississippi State, this is a team that they beat Memphis, they beat Arizona. They've looked good, but Arizona hasn't been good in a while, and who knows what Memphis is. On the other side, you got LSU. They beat Southern like they were supposed to, but obviously the Florida State game that's still fresh. First year under Brian Kelly, year 3 under Mike Leach. Just what are your thoughts about that matchup?
Well, I think LSU is one of two schools that I just didn't know anything about how they were going to perform going into the season. They could be really good. They could be really bad. Auburn was kind of the other one. But LSU, week one, again, maybe we're overgeneralizing, but week one, the answer was really bad. They were just awful against Florida State. So I think you would give the edge to Mississippi State in this one. They've got a lot of experience on their team. Mississippi State does. And at least right now, it's very early in the Brian Kelly era at LSU, but at least right now, Mississippi State's probably the more physical team with the better quarterback, with a better team right now, which probably means LSU is going to win the game, probably. But that's kind of how I see that one.
And it's interesting. I was looking at some numbers, and you look at Mike Leach. I don't think this gets talked about a lot. They've been really good on defense since he's been there.
They have. Yeah, that's been very surprising. You don't think about that, but every once in a while you would see that at Washington State as well. They would rise up, and who knew they would be that good on defense, but they have, and you've seen that a few times under him at Mississippi State.
We were talking about Auburn and Penn State. We talking about, Brian Harsin, important game. Miami A&M, I mean, this is a big game for Jimbo Fisher.
It is.
Because, I mean, look at this. His record is 35-15 in 50 games. Kevin Sumlin was 36-14, the guy they fired. And I've been critical on this show of Jimbo Fisher. I said he's an 8-4 coach. You take Jameis Winston away from at Florida State. That's pretty much what he's been. And quarterback's been an issue at A&M, I think. I mean, I know they went 9-1 in 2020, but other than that, they've been 8-4, 9-3. For you going in this game, Miami has the advantage at quarterback. Haynes King has not played well. We'll see if Mac Johnson plays. Tyler Van Dyke's looked at as a second-round potential draft pick. And obviously this is the first year under Cristobal. What's your thoughts? And the same thing with this one going into A&M in Miami.
Yeah, I think I'd have to favor Miami. And no disrespect to Appalachian State. They're obviously very good. They're one completed conversion away from being a pretty well-ranked team right now. Mm-hmm. But there's no way that a team that has recruited as well as Texas A&M has the past 2 or 3 years should be pushed around on the field like Appalachian State did Texas A&M. Both sides of the ball on the line of scrimmage, Appalachian State dominated. So I can, in good conscience, think that the same thing, what different could possibly happen with Miami coming to town. They've got better players. They've got a better quarterback, like you said. They're going to have to do something different. And now I wonder about the psyche of this team. I wonder if it's shattered a little bit after the Appalachian State loss, because I think this team believed it could win every game on its schedule.
Yeah, I mean, we were all circling the October 8th matchup between Alabama and Texas A&M, and now that's that's taking a hit with that loss. I mean, if they lose another one here, but they had 2 or 3 losses before they played Alabama last year. It's 2 as well. So I mean, and that was my thing with last year. They all talked to A&M people say, "Oh, we beat Alabama," but you still went 8-4. So I mean, what did you really accomplish when you did that?
I know, and I probably have been proven wrong about Jimbo Fisher, because I had said when he got to Texas A&M and said it repeatedly. Okay, when he recruits talent, when he gets that talent built up there and has some top 5 recruiting classes, he's going to do very good. Well, he hasn't. He's been the exact same coach the whole time. And as others have pointed out, he calls the plays and his offense looks like it's stuck. And that may be as much of the problem as anything.
Yeah, so we'll see how this all shakes out this weekend. It's going to be an interesting weekend in the SEC with those 3 matchups. We got some other big national matchups as well going on in the country. And this has been fun, Lance, having you on. Like I said, it's been a while since we had done this podcast for him, but I appreciate you coming on the show. Before we let you go, tell people where they can check out the game plan and where can they follow you.
You bet. We've already moved on to 3 hours now with football season underway. So we're 6 to 9 a.m. on FM 100.1 and AM 560. You can go to woofradio.com and click listen and then click podcasts, and you can catch us anytime on the podcast. And you can follow me on Twitter at Eagle Lance.
All right, sounds good, Lance. Once again, I appreciate the time, and I hope we can do this again sometime down the road.
Love to, Phillip. Thank you.
All right, once again, thanks to Lance Griffin for coming on today's edition of the Phillip Jordan Show. Really appreciate him taking the time, and that was a lot of fun talking about Alabama, Auburn, Penn State, Mississippi State, LSU, and the A&M Miami game. And now we're going to jump into some of the games for this weekend. Going to pick some college and NFL games. And starting off on Friday, going to talk about Florida State and Louisville. Florida State comes in here 2-0. This is a Friday night game, like I said. Louisville's 1-1. They had a win over Central Florida last week. And I'm intrigued by the quarterbacks here. Jordan Travis has really shown improvement. Really just show it against LSU. And Duquesne too as well as a passer. We know what he can be as a runner, but he really has shown improvement as a passer. Malik Cunningham, one of the most electric players in all of college football. This is going to be a fun game. 6:30, and like I always say, guys, I do Central Time because I'm in Alabama. ESPN, Florida State's a 2.5-point favorite in this one. I'm going to go with Florida State. I think it will be close, though, because like I said, Malik Cunningham is one of those talents. He's just an electric player, super, super talented, super athletic. He keep Louisville in this game. But I just like where Mike Norvell has his Florida State program going. So I'm going to go with the Seminoles in this one. Now we'll jump into Saturday, number 12, BYU 2-0 will be at Oregon, who is 1-1 on the year. This is a 2:30 kickoff over on Fox. Oregon is a 3.5-point favorite in this one. Of course, they are still reeling the 49-3 drumming they had at the hands of the Georgia Bulldogs. They are 1-1. They got a win last week. BYU comes in this game at 2-0. Big overtime win over Baylor last week. And one thing in college football, it's always intriguing with a team. Once you get one big win, can you capitalize with another? Now, BYU is a team a lot of people are thinking could be one of those teams that could crash the playoff party, be that non-Power 5A or independent, could get in. This is big. Obviously, you got to win this one here. Oregon's going to want to come out and win. This is a big game for them. Big game for Bo Nix. They don't want to drop to 1-2. Obviously, this is not a Pac-12 game, so it's not going to impact them there. I'm going to go with BYU here, though. I think they're really well around the team and super impressed by what they did against Baylor in overtime last week. Troy at Appalachian State. Both teams are 1-1, but it's not the same kind of 1-1. Troy with a 28-10 loss to Ole Miss. They won last week against Alabama A&M, but offensively they have not looked great yet. This is game 3 under head coach John Summerall. Appalachian State is just a few plays away from being undefeated. Couple 2-point conversions go their way against North Carolina. They're 2-0, and we're talking really big stuff. Appalachian State game day will be there at Boone. Chase Bryce has played really well. The running game for Appalachian State is really good. They have a really good defense. I think Troy's going to struggle offensively in this game. It's going to be tough for them. I'm going to go with Appalachian State to win this. Appalachian State is a 12.5-point favorite in this one. Another 2:30 matchup, which me and Lance talked about. Penn State at Auburn. This will be on CBS. Penn State is an early favorite right now in this one. Of course, it's on Wednesday night. This is tough because I could see Auburn pulling this one out, finding a way, because it's a big game. And as we talked about there, is it a must win? We'll see. Are they going to wear the orange jerseys? I'm not for the orange jerseys. I'm a traditionalist. I don't believe in gimmicks with your jerseys. That's just not where I lean with that. We'll see what happens. This is Wednesday night. I know Brian Harsin said on Wednesday he was not against it. Basically is what he said. We know the players are there. There's been some social media fun being had because of the orange jerseys. We shall see. We shall see what happens with that. But I will say this. I want to pick Auburn because of the run game. They're going to have to lean on the running game. It's going to have to be a lot of Tank Bigsby, a lot of Jarquez Hunter, a lot of Robbie Ashford running the read play. Don't put the ball in the hands too much of TJ Finley. Auburn defensively, I think they can play really well against them. This is a Penn State team that last year struggled to run the ball. I know they had some success last week against Ohio, but that's Ohio. This is Auburn. Derek Hall and that group up front with him and Owen Papo, Cam Riley there at linebacker. Auburn secondary had some issues against San Jose State, and they let some big plays happen against Mercer too. They're going to have to get some pressure on Sean Clifford, which they've only had 4 sacks on the year. Clifford is, I've labeled him the Big Ten Bo Nix. He will throw you up some, and Auburn's going to need to take advantage of that in this one. I write about Auburn. I'm going to go Auburn. I say Auburn pulls this one off somehow, some way. TJ Finley does not make mistakes. The running game's good. The defense is good. Clifford gives them something, and the Auburn crowd makes an impact on Clifford. So I'm going to say Auburn wins this one. I was going to go with Penn State there, but I'll go with Auburn. I'll go ahead and pick the team I do cover for Last Word on College Football. Then we're going to go with Louisiana Monroe and Alabama. Okay, we know Alabama's going to win this. They're 49-point favorite here. This is 3 o'clock over on SEC Network, the 2007 revenge game. Louisiana Monroe, we talked about it with Tony Sakalas. They don't have a losing record against Alabama, but Alabama's going to roll this one. What you want to see here, you want to see Bryce Young get in and get out. You want to see a lot of guys get in and get out. You want to see good play from the offensive line. Keep Bryce Young clean. Do get some good plays with the running games, make some plays, and you just want to see the defense not commit to penalties, be disciplined versus what they were last week against Texas. Mississippi State at 2-0 will be at LSU, who's 1-1. 5 o'clock kickoff on ESPN. Mississippi State is a 2.5-point favorite. This should be a fun, interesting game. Will Rogers really is set in place at Mississippi State at quarterback, plays really well. And like we said, we talked with Lance, Mississippi State plays very underrated defense as well. They're not bad when you think about Mike Leach. You don't think about defense, but they have been pretty solid. And we'll just see. We'll see what happens with LSU. They did what they needed to do against Southern. We saw how bad they looked against Florida State. What are we going to see? Maybe it's something there in the middle. I want to see Kayshon Boutte get more involved in the passing game. He really wasn't much last week against Southern, I know it's Southern. And then, of course, 2 catches for 20 yards against Florida State. You need to get your All-American receiver involved. I want to see Jaden Daniels not run after looking at his first option, his first read. Yes, use his running ability when you have to, but do not be reliant on it. So that's kind of what I'm looking for that one. So I'm thinking Mississippi State's going to win this one. I think they're going to go into Baton Rouge and get a big win here. And then the last game, number 13, Miami 2-0 at Texas A&M at 1-1. 8 o'clock kickoff, so it's going to be a late night, some hashtag ACC and SEC after dark here. 8 o'clock kickoff, ESPN. A&M, they are a 5.5-point favorite despite losing to Appalachian State last week. I am going to go – I think A&M will find a way, but I think Max Johnson's going to come in the game. I think that's what's going to happen. I told you guys I'm not big on Haynes King. That guy just he's not it, in my opinion, and they need to go a different direction there. Jimbo needs a win. He can't go 1-2. You cannot be 1-2, and then you play Arkansas next, who right now looks like the second-best team in the SEC West. So now I'm going to pick some NFL games on Thursday night. I think this Prime stuff. I don't have Amazon Prime. I guess I'm going to have to sign up. But Chargers 1-0 at Chiefs at 1-0. 7:15, like I said, on Amazon Prime. Kansas City is a 4-point favorite. I'm going to pick Kansas City here. Chargers obviously have some injuries there at wide receiver. They look really good against the Raiders, but the Chiefs looked awesome against the Cardinals. I don't think they'll be as awesome here, but I'm going to go with the Chiefs. On Sunday, the Buccaneers are at the Saints. Both teams are 1-0. 12 o'clock on Fox. Tampa Bay is a 2.5-point favorite, but I'm going to go with the Saints here. They've got their number in the regular season with Tom Brady. They're going to get pressure on Brady. The offensive line did show some issues. I know Michael Parsons is going to cause a lot of issues for a lot of people. And then now with Chris Godwin not there, it's Julio Jones, it's Mike Evans at receiver. We're probably going to see a lot of Leonard Fournette, but I just think that New Orleans is going to get pressure, and they showed a lot coming back against Atlanta last week. So I'm going to go with the Saints with the upset. Patriots at Steelers, 12 o'clock on CBS. New England's a 2-point favorite here. Mac Jones with the back issues. I know TJ Watt is not going to be there for the Steelers, but they still got Hayward up front. They still got a lot of good defensive players here. I think the Steelers win just because they're not going to score a lot of points. Defense will reign supreme. Just the Patriots are very ordinary offensively. They don't have a lot of playmakers. They don't really have anybody on that offense that is going to scare you. The offensive line's got issues. I don't think they're going to be able to protect Mac Jones. And like I said, unless Mitch Trubisky just starts turning the ball over left and right, I don't think the Patriots have much of an opportunity because they're going to need turnovers to get a short field. But I am going to go with the Steelers in this one. Bears at the Packers. Bears are 1-0. Packers are 0-1. 7:20 on NBC. Green Bay, they are a 10-point favorite here. I'm going to like the Packers here. Look, they didn't look good last year in the first game against the Saints. They corrected it. Aaron Rodgers didn't play much in the preseason. He didn't play at all in the preseason. So he's got to get that chemistry down with these new wide receivers. But I also look at the Bears winning against the 49ers. That was bad weather, monsoon. I don't – look, congratulations. You got to win, Bears. I'm proud of you. I'm proud for you, happy for you. But the Packers are going to come out. This is Atlanta. The Packers are not going 0-2. They'll take care of the Bears. And then Monday night, we got 2 Monday night games. The Titans at 0-1 versus the 1-0 Buffalo Bills. 6:15 on ESPN. Buffalo's a 10-point favorite. I think Buffalo's going to roll in this one. They're going to get after Ryan Tannehill. I just think the Titans got bad. I mean, the South, AFC South did not look good. No team got a win. 2 play each other, tied. That was the Colts and the Texans. Jaguars and Titans all lost. Titans lost to the Giants last week. That's not a good start to the season. They're going to go 0-2. The Bills are going 2-0. The Bills are on a Super Bowl pick. You guys know that. And then finally, you have the Vikings at the Eagles. I'm expecting some offense in this one. The Vikings offense looked good. Justin Jefferson, the Packers had no answer for him in the past game. The Eagles played really well offensive too as well. Jalen Hurts is going to make some plays. A.J. Brown's going to make some plays. That run game is going to make some plays. So that is going to be a fun game for this one. I'm going to pick the Vikings to win this one in an offensive shootout. If Eagles are 2-point favorite, now this is at 7:30 on ABC, but I'm going to go with the Vikings on that one. And that's my picks going into the weekend. Podcast will be back next week. Already got Matt Lowe confirmed, so we're going to break down all things college football with him on this show. But anyways, guys, I appreciate checking out. Thank you again to Lance Griffin for coming on the show. A lot of fun chatting with him. Remember, you can follow me on social media at PJordanSEC. Podcast is available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your podcast. If you're on Apple Podcasts, please follow, rate, and review. Leave a review. I will read it on a future edition of the show. You can check out the show over on YouTube, the Phillip Jordan Sports YouTube channel. Just hit the subscribe button, hit the bell for all notifications, and also leave a comment on a video. I'll read that on a future edition as well. And you can always email me at sports.phillipjordan@gmail.com. So I will talk to you guys next week, and have fun. Enjoy the football this weekend. Until next week. Bye-bye.